Well, it's happening. Price increases are hitting the tech sphere in the US, and this week was a big one. Logitech increased prices massively across virtually all of their product lines. I went through every single SKU to wrap my head around just how big this change was, and it's pretty massive. Some quick highlights are the MX Keys S going from $110 to $130, an 18% increase. The MX Master 3S going from $100 to $120, a 20% increase, and some large increases across gaming peripherals and some of Logitech's more niche areas. Let's break down the impacts to each category, talk about the total impact, and talk about the potential ripple effect that this may have. You can use the chapters down below to jump around to the areas that you care about, but make sure you get to the end to hear about the total impact of all the changes, which is pretty shocking. Beginning with non-gaming keyboards, we looked at 19 products and 10 of them experienced an increase. The average increase was just over $11 or about 14%. The biggest frustration is definitely the MX Keys. If you go back to my original review of this keyboard back in 2021, this was a $100 keyboard. 4 years later, there is technically a new version of it, but it's essentially identical. And this is now the second time they've increased the price without providing really anything new of value. First, it went to $110. Now it's gone to that $130 price tag. At $130, this is the first time where I kind of question whether it's actually worth it. And this is a keyboard that I absolutely love. For the time being, I'd say it's strictly a buy when on sale in my personal opinion. Outside of that, they increased the already overpriced MX Mechanical series and the new K950, which I'm personally a fan of. But $90 is starting to push it, especially since you could previously get it with a $50 mouse for $100. I really think that many of these keyboards got pushed too far here, extending beyond what is reasonable for the individual product. Gaming keyboards were hit even harder. 74% of the 19 models received price hikes with an average of over $17, with one of them increasing as high as $30 above its original price. Since gaming keyboards are more expensive overall, these increases represented a slightly smaller percentage change, only an average of 12%, but the fact that so many of them are increasing makes it sting pretty bad if you're in the market for a gaming board. Interestingly though, gaming peripherals was the only space where we saw a handful of MSRP decreases. However, in all but one case, the discounted price that they were actually charging either stayed the same or actually went up despite lowering the MSRP. So sadly, there's not really any good news throughout this story. For mice, we looked at 24 different products and 14 of them had price changes. That's 58%. They changed by an average of about $8 or 16% of the cost. The biggest changes were the MX Master 3S, the MX Ergo S, and the MX Vertical, all of which went up by $20. Some of the mouse changes may seem small, like the M330 or the M240, both of which I've reviewed on the channel. They increased by just $3, but on a percentage basis, those are actually 15% changes compared to the old price. In total, mice were one of the hardest hit areas, though I'm happy to see that the Signature series, that's the M550, 650, and the newer M750, all stayed the same. With gaming mice, we see a similar impact to gaming keyboards. 14 of the 17 models, or 82%, had increases with a higher dollar amount, $10 on average, but a lower percentage increase, only 9%, since these mice are, on average, more expensive than the productivity models. Still, paying $10 more on virtually any gaming mouse model is painful, and in particular, two models, the G705 and the G502X, both saw 25% bumps from $80 to $100. For mouse and keyboard combos, there are 15 of them. 9 got an increase for an average of $7 or 14%. This category, though, makes no sense. First of all, we talked about the MX Keys S and MX Master 3S going up by a combined $40, yet the combo, which includes both of them, remains unchanged at $200. As it stands, this combo suddenly becomes one of the best value products that Logitech offers, especially when you consider that it throws in a wrist rest. On the flip side, there is the Signature Slim MK955 combo, which went up $20 despite the products it includes only going up $10. This was a good value previously, providing an $80 keyboard and a $50 mouse for $100 total, but 23% savings. Now it's a $90 keyboard and a $50 mouse for $120, only a 14% savings. In addition to the increases at the higher end, Logitech chose to nickel and dime folks on the budget end of the combo section, which is just a little bit annoying. Because it's one thing to take away from the person investing in a $200 desk setup, but squeezing $2 extra out of a person who can only afford the cheapest mouse and keyboard available just kind of hurts. Now that we've gotten through the big ones, I'll go a bit quicker. In audio, I was pleased to see no impact to any of Logitech's speakers, including the entire UE Boom lineup. Headsets only had 4 of the 13 products changed, and they're all fairly small. Then there's microphones, which is a doozy. 75% of the microphone-related products had changes, and the average was over $24 or 17%. This includes their boom arms, some of which had $30 or $40 increases, plus microphones, which had $10, $20, and $30 changes themselves. I don't follow these products closely, so I don't know if there's a reason for this, but this was one of the first ones that really stood out to me at its scale. Microphones aren't the craziest, though. That clearly belongs to the driving sim equipment. The Pro Racing Wheel went up $200 from $1,000 to $1,200. In total, there were 7 increases, averaging close to $70 each, or 18%, which is tied for the highest percentage increase across all the categories. Other simulation equipment was also hit, though not quite as bad, with an average increase of 12%. In other desk categories, we first have lighting. All 3 lights that Logitech sells saw increases. $10 for the Litra Glow, $20 for the Litra Beam, and $10 for the Litra Beam LX. These are great lights that I reviewed a long time ago, but much like all of these products, it's frustrating to see them rise in price so many years after their launch. Webcams were one of the lightest areas hit. Only the C922 Pro webcam experienced an increase in the traditional webcam space. Then the Mevo streaming cameras also saw increases. Finally, we have miscellaneous categories. For iPad keyboards, only 2 of them had increases, but they were large $30 increases. All 4 presentation remotes saw increases, most were small though. And finally, in accessories, there were a couple small increases to the MX Palm Rest and the MX Travel Case. In total, I reviewed 176 products for before and after pricing. Here is the full data set. I pulled all of this manually, so it's possible there are a couple errors in there, but I did my best, and I apologize if I messed anything up. The list has a few exclusions, and I'm specifically looking at MSRPs here. Here are some of the notes that if you want to pause and fully understand what I was looking at, you can do so. So, of those 176 products, 51% had some sort of increase. That's crazy. Half of everything that Logitech sells, they didn't even bother to put out a press release explaining it. The average increase was over $18, or about a 14% increase. And we can do a lot of speculation and finger pointing about why these price changes have occurred, but I'll stick to the facts here as much as possible. Logitech's fiscal year ended on March 31st. These price changes, from what I can tell, went into effect somewhere in early April. I discovered them personally around April 14th. They issued a press release on April 10th, the week prior, withdrawing their financial outlook for the fiscal year, which runs from April 2025 through March 2026, due to, quote, continuing uncertainty of the tariff environment. So we know that they are bracing for tariff impacts. I reached out to Logitech to request a comment on the price changes, but they did not get back to me in time to make it into this video. It's been a bit of a quick turnaround. Even without official comment though, it seems like it's pretty safe to say that these US price changes are at least in part due to the newly announced tariffs. Now, Logitech does do the bulk of their manufacturing in China, and as a result will soon likely be subject to a potentially very high new tariff, though exact numbers change frequently. It's not clear how much of the expected tariff impact is being passed on to consumers here, but it's definitely some. So what does this mean? Well, Logitech is one of the largest computer accessory companies in the world. It's tough to shop for a mouse or a keyboard and not come across them. And there are tons of people out there, for better or for worse, who simply seek out whatever Logitech product is in their budget whenever they need something new. As a result, what Logitech does with their product pricing will inevitably cause other companies to follow suit. They're going to be a leader in this area. If you're a smaller company competing with brands like Logitech, you have to compete on price since you don't necessarily have the same brand reputation behind you. When Logitech suddenly increases the price of their direct product competitor, it frees that small company up to take that little extra wiggle room and potentially do the same and increase their prices. I expect that this is just one of many dominoes that will fall over time. I don't think any others will be quite this large and obvious, but we're likely to see more of this type of price inflation in the US market very soon. It will also be interesting to see what happens in markets outside of the US. Even though most of the likely causes for these increases are US-based, there are a myriad of ways that this could go, which will impact markets in Europe and elsewhere. For now, it seems that prices in those other markets remain unchanged, at least from what I can tell. So what do you think? What do you make of all of these changes to the industry? Would any of these changes that we just looked at impact your purchase decision on some of these products? Let me know in the comments, but please, I beg of you, keep it civil. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.